Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the press and public and anyone else who I may have missed out. I welcome to this first full meeting of the Council since the annual Council of the 16th of May. It is the opportunity for new councillors to experience procedure and for former councillors to refresh their skills. First, some important announcements. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security doors to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer to the rear of the chamber. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the open green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. With respect to webcasting of proceedings, the proceedings of this meeting tonight will be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. And I take it everyone therefore is happy since no one is moving. Any filming or recording will not be permitted for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered, following the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. With respect to restriction of the use of mobile phones, would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls in the chamber while this meeting is in progress. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I believe we have 2 apologies. They are...
Councillor Boyd and Towning.
We have apologies from Councillor Boyd and Councillor Turning. Anybody else? Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bertie Braidwood. And could I just ask Council to note the untimely death of his father? The funeral was today, and I'd like to be able to assure him of the very best wishes of all of his colleagues here in this place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Piper, and I'm sure every councillor, officer and member of the public here feels the same way and extends their condolences. Moving on to agenda item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of May 2019. I move that the minutes of the meeting of this council held on the 16th of May 2019 be approved and signed as a correct record. Would the Vice Chairman please second that?
Seconded, Chairman.
Do members agree? Thank you. Agenda item 3. I have an announcement this evening which honours our past chairman. The presentation of the past chairman's badge, no less. Would Councillor David Saunders please make his way to the top table? Please, would councillors be upstanding while I present the past chairman with his badge? You may sit down. Carry on standing if you like.
Can I just say that I'd like to thank all of the councillors that were here when I was elected to the position of chairman, and for their support over the previous year. It was really enjoyable going out once again to represent Thanet in the wider areas of Kent, and I'd particularly like to thank the support that I received from Charlie and John, the drivers, during that time. So thank you very much. I will wear this badge with pride whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Saunders. He's going to be a hard act to follow, I can assure you. Moving on to agenda item 5, petitions. No, pardon. My apologies. Agenda item 4, declarations of interests. Are there any declarations of interest here this evening? Councillor Game.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Question 5, I'm actually on the board of East Kent Housing, so I can't take that question. The leader will take it instead.
Thank you very much, Councillor Game. Any other declarations of interest this evening? And I don't see any. Moving on to agenda item 5, petitions. A petition has been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 12. Agenda item 5A, petition regarding Margate Clock Tower toilets. A petition containing 386 valid signatures has been received by this council. Councillor Yates, you have up to 3 minutes to introduce your petition.
Thank you, Chair. One of the reasons I became a councillor is because I got annoyed with the state of the T.S. Eliot toilets and looking down on them from my flat and seeing them closed on busy bank holiday weekends. And it's not the frustration that they're closed because leaks happen, problems happen, but it's the fact that there's no temporary portaloos being put in. For the record, I have no interest in portaloo companies. So why was this specific petition raised? On the 18th of April 2019, TDC issued a press release which said, Margate Clock Tower toilets will remain closed. This temporary closure of the Clock Tower toilets is a result of pre-season inspection in which they are found to be unsafe. We're looking at putting temporary toilets in place this summer whilst the Clock Tower facilities are closed. A petition was therefore raised as it is becoming increasingly clear that the toilets had structural issues and no temporary toilets were being put in place. To my knowledge, the only temporary toilets that have been put in place this summer have been for the Margate Meltdown on the last weekend in May, which was partly because the Wetherspoons was closed for refurbishment. So the short-term question, therefore, comes down to why are there no temporary toilets in place? And this is causing huge queues at the T.S. Eliot toilets, and this is disproportionately affecting women. So on to the issue of cost. I've spoken to council officers, and there are savings that have been made because of the closure of the Clock Tower toilets due to the lack of water bills. The weekly rental cost of a portaloo on Margate Seafront is £29 a week, with a small cost on top for cleaning. With the Turner Prize coming to Margate, I really hope that the council will take notice of the level of passion behind this issue and use some of the cost savings to put temporary toilets in place and give the Harbour Arm toilets some door locks, potentially. The petition has been signed by nearly 400 people, so I think it's worthwhile just to hear quickly from the local residents of businesses, so I've got their quotes. This is from a pub owner. As a local businessman suffering from the closure of the Clock Tower toilets, I have to ask, do the council care about local businesses being detrimentally affected? Not only as a businessman, but also as a local who enjoys our beautiful beach with my family, I would like to know what solutions the council plan to offer to replace this basic amenity. The closure of the toilets have a huge negative effect on the local area, and it is such a shame when locals have worked so hard to regenerate the local area and boost tourism. One resident commented on the alternative toilets, saying, "The toilets on the Harbour Arm are an absolute disgrace. They are seriously hurting the businesses here." And the event organiser for the toilet protest on the 25th of April outside this building has said, "There is a level of fury and outrage among residents in response to the council's constant fobbing off with cheap words and inaction that the council would do well to take note of. A movement has started, and we, the residents of Thanet, will be holding TDC to account." Finally, with the Turn Prize coming to Margate and the public outrage from visitors, businesses and locals, we hope the council will take notice and repair the Clock Tower toilets. Put temporary toilets in place to replace them at busy times, and perhaps improve the nearby toilets, for example, by putting door locks on the toilet cubicles at the Harbour Arm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. In accordance with the Council's petition scheme, the petition will be referred to Cabinet without debate for report to the Council within 3 ordinary meetings. Moving on to agenda item 6, questions from the press and public. 4 questions have been received from members of the public in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule number 13. Please note that only the questioner and respondent are permitted to speak on the question, and that if the question is not present at the meeting, their question cannot be put but will be replied to in writing. Could the questioner please only state the name of the Cabinet member to whom their question is to be put, and read out the exact wording of the question that they submitted to the Council? Would members now please refer to supplementary agenda number 1 that you should all have had. So moving straight on to agenda item 6A, question number 1 from a member of the public regarding noise nuisance. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Schul to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the top table? Yes. Could you come down on my left-hand side, please? Thank you.
Leslie Game. Statutory noise nuisance policy and practice requires urgent strategic operational overhaul, rendering it fit for purpose to deal with ASB where residential street disturbances involve car stereo, karaoke, mobile phones, functioning as street-based sound systems. Can a noise abatement officer liaising out of hours with Thanet Police be instituted?
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mr. Schul. I'm sure we're sympathetic with that. I call upon Councillor Game to respond.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Schul, for your question. Statutory noise nuisance is defined by the Environmental Protection Act 1990, and changes to that are outside of the remit of the local authority. Thanet District Council has agreed an environmental enforcement policy which follows the principles of the National Enforcement Concordiat to assist environmental protection officers in undertaking proportionate enforcement. This is currently being reviewed to ensure that it is still appropriate, and your concerns can be fed into this review. It should be noted that a statutory nuisance is very different to disturbance. Unfortunately, resources at all public services are not sufficient enough to provide the type of service you are suggesting. But we do provide an out-of-hours service to gather evidence in ongoing cases and work closely with Kent Police on relevant cases. The Environmental Protection Team investigate over 1,000 noise complaints a year, a majority of which are from domestic premises, which reported to us music in the street is investigated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Game. Moving on to agenda item 6B, question number 2 from a member of the public regarding hedgerow and tree maintenance. I am pleased to welcome Miss Matwee to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the top table? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm addressing my question to Ash Ashby. I'm a member of the local environmental group Thanet Trees. Will TDC create paper trails as to who orders works on trees and hedgerows so that someone is accountable for any felling and trimming? And are they willing to reinstate the full-time tree officer?
Thank you very much, Miss Matwee. I call upon Councillor Ashby to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. I'd like to advise that following the recent review, the additional processes for works on trees and hedgerows will be imminently adopted by the open space team. This includes an ecological risk assessment to be carried out for a variety of parks and open space works. This improved process will include the use of new technology to include a thermal imaging wildlife camera recently purchased and currently being trialled. This will be used alongside the traditional methods of ecological monitoring as part of the prescribed process that must be followed before works are carried out. Check sheets will be included as part of the ecological risk assessment to ensure compliance is documented. Recommendations are also being sought from the RSPB, Wildlife Trusts and other local authorities to help develop this. I can also confirm that Thanet District Council will be recruiting arborists for the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashby. I move on to agenda item 6C, question number 3 from a member of the public regarding an environment and biodiversity strategy. I call upon Mr. Wise to make his way to the top table. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to Councillor Beauford. Given the growing public interest and concern with regard to our natural environment, will the Council commit to preparing an environment and biodiversity strategy and associated policies for Thanet, publish a timeline for completion, and include consultation with local experts and other interested parties in the work programme?
Thank you very much, Mr. Wise. I call upon the leader to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wise, for your question. It's important that we move towards a sustainable future where Thanet is resilient to environmental change. We must also address the risks, impacts and opportunities arising from that change. Later this evening, I'm anticipating that Council will agree to a number of actions in connection with declaring a climate emergency, and I am sure that the creation of an environment and biodiversity strategy can be considered by Cabinet along with any other proposals being recommended. It should be noted that there is currently a Kent biodiversity strategy in place being overseen by the Kent Nature Partnership, as well as KCC's own Kent Environment Strategy. It would obviously make sense to see how these documents and the activities associated with them might inform our own strategy. This will also avoid any duplication of effort. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Councillor Beauford. Agenda item 6D, question number 4 from a member of the public regarding Margate Clock Tower toilets. I am pleased to welcome Ms. Eleanor to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the top table? Thank you.
Hiya, my question is for Councillor Ashby. With the high season soon approaching, when will Thanet District Council fix and reopen the Clock Tower toilets to accommodate the vast amount of visitors to the town?
Thank you very much, Ms. Eleanor. I call upon Councillor Ashby to respond.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. We presently have no plans to reopen the Clock Tower toilets, as these now fall within a more strategic approach to the whole provision of toilet facilities across the district. It would therefore not be cost effective to spend several £1,000s on this facility until we agree the investment strategy going forward. There are several other toilets within close proximity that people can use. In terms of events, organisers should be providing additional toilets if this is deemed a requirement by our Safety Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashby. Thank you, Ms Eleanor. Moving on to agenda item 7, I have questions from members of this council. Now, 7 questions have been received from members of the council. Please note that the time allowed for consideration of the questions from members should not exceed 30 minutes without leave of the chair. On this occasion, if the 30 minutes limit is exceeded, as chairman, I will allow the remaining questions to be heard. However, I have to ask members to be succinct as far as possible, as the council does have a full agenda this evening. So moving straight on to agenda item 7A, question number 1 from a member regarding traveller incursions. I call upon Councillor Taylor.
Evening, Chair. I direct my question at Councillor Game. The question is, how is the new administration going to tackle the expensive traveller incursions?
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. I call upon Councillor Game to respond.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Taylor, for your question. A significant amount of activity is underway to address the growing number of unauthorised encampments across the district, which in 2018 rose to 55. The Council is developing a strategy to ensure its resources are targeted as effectively as possible, and this work is being coordinated by a new Officer Task and Finish group. The group, which was established in February, has been focusing on the following key areas of work: developing and implementing an action plan for the potential of traveller accommodation, defining and improving the security of high-risk locations, defining and undertaking enforcement to protect high-risk locations, robustly challenging criminal and antisocial behaviours. Positive progress is being made, and this work will now feed into the newly created Traveller Scrutiny Working Group, which held its inaugural meeting today. Updates will be provided to all councillors on this work as it progresses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Game. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary question?
That'd be fine, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, moving on to agenda item 7B, question number 2 from a member regarding child poverty. I call upon Councillor Constantine.
Thank you very much, Chair. I believe that I've got 2 minutes to put my question. I'm going to use 2 minutes. I'd like to start by outlining the effects of child poverty in the area. We know that children suffering from child poverty have poor physical health, experience mental health problems, have a low sense of well-being, experience social deprivation, feel unsafe, experience stigma and bullying at school. Children from poorer backgrounds lag at all stages of education. By the age of 3, poorer children are estimated to be, on average, 9 months behind children from more wealthy backgrounds. By 16, children receiving free school meals achieve 1.7 grades lower at GCSE. Poverty is also associated with higher risk of both illness and premature death. Children from low-income families are more likely to die at birth or in infancy. They are more likely to suffer chronic illness during childhood or have a disability. Recent research shows Thanet has the highest rate of child poverty in Kent, in wealthy Kent, with Newington now one of the most severely affected wards, with child poverty at a shocking 51% of children in that ward. Cliftonville West, Dane Valley, 46%. Northwood, Margate Central and Salmerston, 42%. That's 35% of children in Thanet living below the poverty line. That's 11,474 of our Thanet youngsters being raised in poverty. What I would like to know from the chair, I think it is from the council leader, is this is my question. Child poverty is unchecked and growing in parts of Kent. In my ward, Newington, recent research shows 51% of all children living in poverty. Can you explain what targets TDC has put into place to mitigate the impact of this poverty?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Constant. I would remind you, of course, that normally speaking, the strict wording of the question should be presented at the council meeting to ensure a proper response is given. I call upon the leader, Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Constantine, for your question. And you're absolutely right. Child poverty is a real issue, but it's not something that the council can tackle alone. And to defeat it will require a wholesale change in the district through education, job opportunities, general economic growth and the supply of good housing. Some of the main root causes of child poverty are unemployment, low earnings and education, all of which sit outside the statutory powers of a district council. Therefore, the council does not have specific targets set to mitigate the impact of child poverty. Having said that, the council does have a shared responsibility with other public sector agencies in mitigating the impacts of child poverty. Strategically, the council will use its position as leader of place to influence partners, for instance in job creation and economic growth. Currently, there are a range of interventions funded and delivered by the council to support residents. During the summer holidays, the council will be running the Fit and Feed project in Newington and Broadstairs, which provides sport and healthy eating sessions for families who rely on free school meals during term time. The council funds Step Up, which is an employability skills training programme for council tenants to assist them with CV writing, job applications and job search. The council gives discretionary housing payments to people receiving housing benefit or the housing cost element of universal credit who need more help with their housing needs. This year, the council has increased the funding to support the Citizens Advice Bureau, who provide debt advice and money capability services to all residents to reduce financial burdens in poorer households. The council has committed to a 3-year funding arrangement, which does include key performance indicators. The council has taken the decision to limit its affordable rents to the local housing allowance rate, which is less than the government 2011 policy on affordable rent, which states no more than 80% of market rent. The majority of the council's homes are let at historical social rents, which should be more affordable to lower income households. Social rent calculates a target rent for each property based on a combination of individual property values and average earnings in each area. The private sector rented team focuses on improving standards in rented accommodation. They work with landlords and tenants to ensure that the legal standards for housing are met. The local plan has a target of 30% affordable housing. We are working with Save the Children on the Eat, Sleep, Learn and Play project, which aims to alleviate the immediate material needs of families living in poverty, improving their young person's well-being, helping them to learn and develop. And items that the project have delivered include household items like cookers, washing machines, mattresses and bedding, and also things to help children like children's bedroom sets, toy and book bundles, and bunk beds, high chairs and push chairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Constant, I've more than a notion that you may have a supplementary question.
I do, Chair. I do have a supplementary question. The scale of the problem is vast, isn't it? It's 35% of our children are living in poverty. Last week, Action for Children said the UK is sleepwalking into a crisis of childhood, with youngsters struggling to cope with anxieties over issues such as Brexit, poverty and climate crisis. I understand Thanet District Council doesn't have a magic wand or a money tree to deal with this situation. I understand that we need to work with partner organisations, but I also understand from working within the voluntary sector and within residents that a lot of the solutions that you've just outlined actually don't work for people and leave these children remaining in poverty. So what I would really like to
Councillor Constantine, can I have the question, please?
I'm coming to the question. I always get interrupted. I take it to heart, you know. What I would like to suggest is that we form a working party with experts to set some targets, to start to look at how we can properly deal with this catastrophe.
Question, please, Councillor Constantine.
That was my question. That was my question.
It didn't quite sound like one.
No,
the leader, would you like to respond to a question we're presuming on?
I think it's a typical Councillor Constantine question, which sounds much more like a party political statement than a question. But I do absolutely agree. Child poverty is unacceptable. It surely is. But as I said in my response to your question, this council doesn't actually hold the levers, so setting targets is difficult. As far as the working party is concerned, I'm very happy to meet you outside of this chamber to talk about what a working party might actually do. It has to have sensible terms of reference. It has to be capable of delivering something. So if you're happy to accept that, Councillor Constantine, I look forward to sitting down with you. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Agenda item 7C, question number 3 from a member regarding the restoration of sites in Cliftonville. Would members please refer to supplementary agenda number 1 for the remaining questions from members. In this instance, I call upon Councillor Curry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Newgate Gap Shelter, the Oval Bandstand, the former Butlins and mini golf sites are among many derelict sites or rundown areas of Cliftonville West that require restoration or development. This is one of the most deprived wards in Kent. What is the Council doing to facilitate this process?
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. I call upon Councillor Saunders to respond.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Curry, for your question, which I'll answer in 4 parts, if I may. With regards to the Newgate shelter, with the roof in a state of disrepair and on the grounds of health and safety, perimeter Harris fencing was recently installed, as we all know, around the structure, and I would confirm that in conjunction with operations services, the remaining roofing is being removed. Once this exercise is completed, the Council will then be able to progress the community asset transfer process and will be contacting the community groups to discuss and progress the matter further. The Oval Bandstand is already on the disposal list and plans are in place to transfer the bandstand under the community asset transfer policy to a local group. Regarding the mini-golf site, this was available to let, but regretfully we had no suitable applications were received. Officers are therefore investigating alternative uses, including the possibility of transforming the site into a community garden or similar. But it is proving difficult to get the required funding, but we're still investigating that possibility. Can I therefore add that the Council would welcome any alternative suggestions to improve the environment from ward councillors and the community of Cliftonville West in general. Finally, the former Butlins site is privately owned and therefore not a council matter. That said, we will be keeping a watchful eye on any future planning proposals submitted for that site. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Curry, do you have a supplementary at all?
I do, yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor Saunders. Will the Council commit to publishing a regular quarterly update to members on progress so these matters are kept in the public eye? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. I call upon Councillor Saunders.
As you'll probably know, we have a number of assets on the disposal list, and I'm quite happy that once these progress through and once we got through the legal saga of transferring them, that members are informed immediately.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saunders. Agenda item 7D, question number 4 from a member regarding the appointment of a tree officer. I call upon Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair. And this is for Councillor Ashby. You said you will be appointing a tree officer within the council, but can you confirm that the one who is appointed, whether that position will be a council position or done on a contract basis, considering the necessity of the role and of solid employment within our area?
Thank you very much, Councillor Duckworth. I call upon Councillor Ashby to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. As stated before, and I'm pleased to reconfirm that we will be advertising and recruiting a person for the post of an arborist, and who will be in position as soon as a suitable candidate is found. I can also confirm that the position will be within and employed by Thanet District Council.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashby. That's positive news. Councillor Duckworth, do you have a supplementary question?
And considering again the necessity of in-house and secure employment, which makes oversight of contracts and work streams much simpler, in relation to third-party contract that resulted in significant damages to hedges at the Winter Garden site, what specific measures are being put into place to either bring these services in-house or ensure adequate oversight and monitoring of these contracts and the works undertaken?
Thank you very much, Councillor Duckworth. I call upon Councillor Ashby.
Thank you. As I stated in the previous answer, everything is being put in place and re-examined, and check sheets will be included as part of the risk assessment process for both in-house and external contractors to make sure they're complying with all the regulations that are concerned with any projects of this nature.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashby. You can't come back on that, Councillor Duckworth. That's as far as it goes, I'm afraid, this evening.
So thank you.
Yeah, oh, well, of course, that's always nice. Thanks very much indeed. There we are, that's good. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 7E, a question number 5 from a member regarding East Kent housing. I call upon Councillor Whitehead.
Good evening, everyone. I believe I'm directing this to Councillor Game.
I think it will be to the leader tonight, Councillor Whitehead.
Right, good evening, Councillor Bayford. Considering the failures in relation to the East Kent housing contract, can you tell me what measures are underway to ideally bring our housing back into in-house management and in the interim to protect tenants who have been failed in terms of health and safety under current management?
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitehead. I call upon the leader, Councillor Bayford.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you for your question. The Council was alerted to the situation regarding the failure of the gas supply contract during May 2019, by which time up to 130 TDC properties did not have a valid landlord gas safety report, an LGSR. Some had been outstanding for more than 2 months. The situation is similar to the other East Kent councils. I'm pleased to update that the current position has improved, and as at the 9th of July, there were 13 outstanding, all of which either have booked appointments or are in the legal process for access. Recovery measures were put in place involving serving default notices on the contractor and issuing works to a selected list of alternative contractors. EKH have dedicated staff to contacting residents and arranging appointments. LGSRs are a statutory health and safety requirement, and this level of outstanding properties represents a significant risk to the Council and to residents. The Council's top priority regarding this matter is the safety of our tenants. EKH are providing regular updates on progress. New LGSRs fall due each week, and it is essential that EKH provide continual robust management of this to ensure that the situation continues to improve and does not deteriorate. The Health and Safety Executive are aware of the position and the recovery arrangements. Landlords are also required to report any significant breaches of required standards to the Regulator for Social Housing, and TDC has written to the Regulator to inform them of the position. The Council's monitoring officer will be required to report the situation to members formally, and a paper has been drafted for the July meeting of Cabinet. The report will be accompanied by a further report setting out the circumstances, recovery actions and future intervention options. Both of these reports have been circulated to all members and will be published on the Council's website on the 15th of July. The further report sets out a range of alternative arrangements for the future management of the Council's housing stock, which will be considered by Cabinet on the 25th of July. The report further advises about the issues that will need to be considered in detail before a decision about the future can be taken, and about the need for extensive resident consultation if any fundamental changes in the arrangements are proposed. In the meantime, I've authorised the Chief Executive to take whatever interim action is required to safeguard the safety of tenants, which I would emphasise again is our top priority. The 4 Council Chief Executives are meeting at least weekly with the Chief Executive of EKH about this matter, and have met with the Chair of EKH Board and will be meeting with the full Board shortly. These meetings will continue to ensure that the focus of improving health and safety arrangements is maintained and to identify any further interventions required. This is being backed up with work being completed by the East Kent Audit Partnership and supplementary inspections by TD officers of council-owned blocks, with the authority to issue works orders directly if required. I speak for the whole of Cabinet in committing to ensure that the recently highlighted issues with tenant health and safety are urgently resolved, and that the Council considers all of the available options to secure the best possible future management arrangement for tenants.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. That seemed very thorough, but Councillor Whitehead, I sense you're on the edge of your seat, so I guess there's a supplementary following.
I'm afraid there will likely always be a supplementary. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bayford. I believe it's our duty as a chamber and our duty as a council to look out for our most vulnerable residents. And in relation to our council housing, it hasn't been happening, as evidenced by the East Kent housing issue. If we think about a lot of our most vulnerable residents, they are being placed out of area. They are often being placed... I'm currently working with a very vulnerable tenant. No. We need to make sure that vulnerable tenants are...
Councillor Whitehead, could I have a question, please?
Yes. My question is, can we make sure that in terms of the placements of particularly vulnerable people, thinking in relation to my work with the winter shelter, can we make sure that we are continuously and effectively monitoring through robust consultation that the effect of particular housing placements on residents?
Yes, Councillor Whitehead, I'm not quite sure we fully understood the question. Okay. Leader, would you like to respond as you see fit to that sort of statement, sort of question?
Respond as I see fit. Look, I mean, quite frankly, I mean, you've raised a totally different issue to the one of East Kent housing, and that was what we're addressing tonight. But I think your concerns are noted, and I'm sure that Councillor Game, when I no longer have to substitute for her, will actually handle that much better than I could. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bayford. I just should mention that it does help people answering questions if a proper question, and I'm not saying that there's any intention otherwise, but a readily understandable question would enable an easy reply, just for future reference and for future councils. Thank you very much indeed. I have agenda item 7F, question number 6 from a member regarding community safety. I call upon Councillor Roth.
Thank you, Chair. My question is easy peasy. Considering that you have recently had a high-profile racially motivated incident, can you tell me what measures are in place to guarantee that we are ensuring that Thanet is a safe and welcoming place for all visitors and residents? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roth. I call upon Councillor Game to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Roth, for your question. Whilst we are actually unable to comment on an ongoing police investigation, I can reassure you that the Council are committed to providing a safe and welcoming environment for visitors and residents. We work with other statutory agencies in the Thanet Community Safety Partnership and with the local community through our regular neighbourhood engagement meetings. The Police Community Liaison Officer, who specialises in incidents of this type, works within the co-located team in the Council office, which enables us to be fully engaged when providing support. Every incident of hate crime is discussed at the Police Threat, Risk and Harm meeting, and contact made on every occasion. Victim and perpetrator information is discussed and action plans developed as applicable. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Game. Do I have a supplementary, Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. Considering the importance of established community-based endeavours in promoting community, will the Council commit to looking at existing anti-racism projects to see how they could be involved in supporting the Council commitment to promote and housing and equality?
Thank you, Councillor Roth. Councillor Game, do you have a response to that?
Thank you. As I said earlier, we are absolutely committed to providing a safe and welcoming environment for our visitors and residents, absolutely everybody. If you'd like to meet with me and discuss this and discuss your thoughts in greater depth, then I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Game. That's very accommodating. I have another question, agenda item 7G, question number 7 from a member regarding member training. I call upon Councillor Hopkinson.
This question is for Councillor Rees-Pugh. The question is, as councillors, we're... Oh, should I stand? Sorry. As councillors, we're likely to encounter residents requiring mental health assistance, sometimes urgently as part of our casework. So would the council therefore consider providing first aid mental health training to help members recognise mental health warning signs and to direct residents towards appropriate help?
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Councillor Hopkinson. Councillor Pugh, do you have a response to that question?
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Hopkinson, for your question. Councillors can and do request training on a wide variety of topics, and this council has provided many courses for both new members as part of the recent induction programme and during the last council term. I'm sure that you will be familiar with the learning needs analysis that has recently been circulated to all councillors by our Democratic Services team. This document helps councillors to identify gaps in their knowledge and is used by Democratic Services to build the member training programme for the rest of this municipal year. I would urge you, and indeed all councillors, to complete this document and to include your suggestion, and it will be considered for inclusion when the results of the learning needs analysis and the draft member training programme are considered by the member training group.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Councillor Hopkinson, do you have a supplementary to that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I suppose I wonder if I could ask what your...
Yes, Councillor Hopkinson, could you please stand to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wonder if I could ask what's your personal view on this issue, given what seems to me to be an increasing need to cater for mental health issues, which seem to be on the increase in Thanet. I wonder what your personal view is on that, on the specific issue, as well as the comments you've made about the fact that you're open to hearing from the rest of us more about it. But I wonder what your personal view is on that, on this issue, on the need for this training, that is.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkinson. Councillor Pugh, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hopkinson. I think it's evidently clear to all councillors, new and old, that we experience many residents come to us with a variety of issues and difficulties that they're having personally for themselves and with issues with the council and the district as a whole. I think it's probably best that we meet privately to discuss this, and I'd be more than happy to do so. The member training group was due to meet this morning to kick-start the next kind of stage of looking at new training programmes, but unfortunately Ms Nick Hughes was unwell, so it was cancelled, but I look forward to it being rescheduled soon so that we can really start looking into this properly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pugh. That is the end of the questions we have this evening from councillors. Moving on to agenda item 8, motions on notice. 2 motions on notice have been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3. Moving straight on to agenda item 8A, therefore, a motion on notice in relation to the declaration of a climate change emergency. I call upon Councillor Yates for the wording of his motion.
Thank you, Chair. According to the IPCC, we are less than 12 years away from catastrophic climate change. In this time, we as a planet must achieve a reduction of our CO2 emissions by 50%, where a tipping point is reached and human intervention to prevent unstoppable global warming becomes much, much more difficult. Nearly every single major national scientific body around the world unreservedly supports the works and findings of the IPCC, so I hope that science tonight is not up for debate. It is with this in mind that we propose to declare a climate emergency in the hope that we, as Thanet District Council, can play our part and aim to be carbon neutral by 2030. So what can be done locally? When it comes to buildings, we can ask for new builds to be zero carbon. We can support the vulnerable by ensuring that properties are insulated as part of legal ECO obligations. We can assess energy efficiency measures in planning applications. When it comes to waste, we can increase the number of flats to recycle, as there are currently 16,000 flats with no recycling bins at all in Thanet. We can add additional recycling bins or recycling points. When it comes to energy, we can opt for a green electricity supplier for council property, and we can support applications for renewable energy schemes. When it comes to transport, we can promote greener refuse vehicles, promote no idling areas outside of schools, and work with KCC to improve the Viking Trail and cycle lanes, and also establish 20-mile-an-hour zones where necessary. When it comes to trees and green spaces, we can ensure that TDC Tree Officer and KCC work to plant more trees and wildflowers, encouraging a bee corridor, use safer neighbourhood grants to improve parks, and work with local groups to help compost any waste material left by the council. And there are many other easy wins. The TDC pension, for example, pays into a pension fund. This sits on fossil fuel investments worth over £267 million. I am not a financial advisor, but I would hazard a guess that investing money in fossil fuel companies is not a great long-term investment. Divesting this money away from fossil fuels might be a win-win situation for pension holders as well as the planet. So what does this motion say? This motion asks the Council to pledge that it is within the Council powers to make TDC carbon neutral by 2030. We call on Westminster for support to reach this target and work with partners across the county and region to support this and investigate future funding opportunities. It is not possible to include within this motion any requirement for the Council to produce an action report within 6 months. But following on dialogue from the leader of the Council, we would appreciate if the leader could commit to producing an action report within 6 months and present this to Council. For those wondering about this motion, this is not a new motion. A climate emergency has already been declared in 5 councils in the South East and is in progress in 13 other councils in the South East. This movement is growing. One point from Labour and Green Party locally. We are aware that KCC has pushed back the timeline for a similar motion to 2050. So if there are any amendments that aim to weaken this, both Labour and Green parties, and we hope other parties here, will aim to vote against any amendment. An emergency becomes significantly less urgent when it's pushed back 20 years. Dear Council members, Council staff and members of the public, the time for talking on climate action is over and the time for action is now.
Councillor Yates, can I ask you to move on to the actual wording of your motion, please?
Sure. We got it.
Don't say if you lost the most important bit.
I was reaching a very good ending. Thank you. So, the Council resolves to declare a climate emergency, to pledge to do what is within our powers and resources to make Thanet District Council carbon neutral by 2030, taking into account both production and consumption emissions, call on Westminster to provide the powers and resources to make the 2030 target possible, continue to work with partners across the county and region to deliver this new goal through all relevant strategies, request the Council investigate all possible sources of external funding and match funding to support this commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. Of course, this is a matter close to all our hearts. I'm sure every councillor in this chamber is sympathetic to this concern, and it's good to have such a lively and proactive public gallery. Thank you very much for attending this evening, everybody. I presume you have a seconder for this motion, Councillor.
I'll second. Thank you.
Hello, who's second?
I'm seconding.
Thank you very much. I call upon the leader, Councillor Bayford, to respond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's very simple. Had conversations with both the councillors that are proposing and seconding this motion, and I believe it's very timely that this should be considered by the council now, and I believe we should debate it this evening, although I don't think it needs an awful lot of debate, because I think we are very, very sympathetic, empathetic to what you're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford, and I believe that's really a proposer for a debate of this motion. Can I have a seconder for the debate? Councillor Ashby, thank you very much indeed. As only Council can adopt this motion, it will fall if not debated, and as we therefore are about to debate, we can take that forward. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour of debate? And that seems unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask who would like to lead the debate here? Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be making my first contribution to a debate in the Chamber as one of 3 newly elected Green councillors, seconding this motion, calling on Thanet District Council to declare a climate emergency. This is undoubtedly the biggest issue facing the global community, and it is vital that we do all we can locally as well as put pressure on the government to act. We know that if we do nothing, Thanet is likely to feel the adverse effects of climate change early as sea levels rise. Millions of pounds have already been spent on coastal defences in Ramsgate and Margate, and if the sea level rises as predicted, then Thanet may well become an island again. I've worked with Councillor Yates over the last few weeks to prepare this motion, and I echo everything he's mentioned during this speech. These are all things it's important for us, the Council, to do. But this isn't something that just the Council can deliver. We will not succeed unless we engage with the wider community of Thanet. There are groups already out there leading the way in the fight against climate change and protecting our trees and green spaces, some of whom are here this evening, and we should be working with and learning from them. We also need to be working with other community and neighbourhood groups and with local businesses to provide the support and resources they will need to reduce their CO2 emissions. I urge all members to think about the future generations of Thanet and to support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gardner, and that's been very well received. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Campbell there. Are you in good form tonight, Councillor Campbell?
You're about to find out, aren't you? Just to inform the Council that last night Ramsgate Town Council actually proposed and adopted a stance of carbon neutral for our local authority at Ramsgate. Thank you. We've also supporting Street Trees for Ramsgate by adopting an allotment and saplings, and we'll consider funding to actually put that process into effect. And if we want to work with Thanet District Council, please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted everyone agree with climate change and they actually approve it because some people actually don't believe in climate change. I suggest we should encourage a resident of Thanet to do more composting, and I think Councillor Yates mentioned that as well. Also encourage the allotment holders to have a community composting area, so those people, they don't have a garden or they don't have a place to recycle and compost their stuff, they can take it to those areas. For example, I heard many times people complain about tree leaf. Tree leaf is a gold dust where farmers and allotment holders use it a lot. I'm an allotment holder and I know how much those kind of things important to the plants you grow. Encourage people, even if they have a small garden yard, to have a compost bin. Also, recycling bin. There is not many recycling bin in the sea areas. If we go down the seafront, we see bin, but there is no recycling bin. If we have a recycling bin, will not be much pressure on those bins. They can be boxes and bottles be put in a different bin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Roper.
Thank you. First of all, I think this is amazing and wonderful that obviously so many people already seem to be supporting this motion. Just read what I've noticed. Anyway, you may have all noticed, obviously, the media attention to climate change and the climate emergency, and thanks in the large part to Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough, who really promoted climate change emergencies. We now have 3 Green councillors on Thanet District Council, which must show that the care that people in Thanet take about the climate is obviously rising to their imagination as well. So we need to now think as individuals and as members of community that we can do something to help, and it's up to us as councillors to set an example. Theresa May announced in June that the UK would be the first major economy to set a legally binding target to end climate emissions by 2050, which is far too long. However, in a report this week, the Climate Change Committee said that the targets already for 2025 and 2030 were likely to be missed by even bigger margins than last year. Targets themselves do not reduce emissions, but they do give us something to focus on. You can't improve anything by just measuring it. A government spokesman said, "We know there is more to do. We set out plans in the coming months to tackle emissions from aviation, heat, energy and transport, as well as further measures to protect the environment from extreme weather, including flooding protection and tree planting." All issues which we seem to have come across lately. So that's what we need to do in TDC, and I sincerely hope that all councillors will support this motion, which will show that we take the climate emergency seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Roper. You are in good company. I see all councillors in this chamber with you. Councillor Constantine.
Sorry.
Is that okay now? Okay, sorry, somebody else's was on. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Chair, and thank you obviously to all the councillors that have spoken so well about this particular issue. And as Councillor Yates said, the science is not up for debate. We do not need to discuss the science of this. I have to say, as a Kent County Councillor, I was very disappointed with Kent County Council not setting a target for 2030, but setting a target for 2050. I want us to pass this motion as it is. I want us to set a harder target. We must take action, and we must have our eyes sighted on that action being in place by 2030. Stretching targets often work better, and this is perhaps the most important target we will ever set or ever debate in this chamber. When I heard this week that temperatures in Anchorage, Alaska, were soaring to 90 degrees, I mean, this is just crazy climate change. We don't really need anything else to remind us of the importance. So in terms of 2030, the City of Edinburgh set a target, Nottingham, Bristol, Durham and Manchester. I would like the Chamber to think about the potency and leverage of and the enthusiasm that would be released here by being a trailblazer in Kent. I would like the Council to think about the release of power, enthusiasm and cooperation of our community, again by being a trailblazer in Kent. I would really like us to lead the way, so let's please make Thanet green.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Constantine. I'm certain that your fervour is not lost by every member in this chamber, and perhaps here we can do better than Kent County Council. Councillor Whitehead.
I would like to thank everyone who's worked so collaboratively on this motion. I can think of many councillors who've done an outstanding job in terms of making sure that this issue is debated to its fullest and considered what seems to be in such a thorough way. I'd like to echo something that Councillor Yates said, in that I think this is a really exciting time for us to think about our long-term plans as well as our short-term plans. There are small things that we can all do, that everybody here can do. But there are larger things that we can do as a council in terms of how we look forward. And I look forward to thinking about how we work in terms of sustainable housing, how we work in terms of our energy, how we work in terms of our long-term projects that will make all of our residents so much happier and so much healthier and work towards this overall goal. It's been an outstanding effort by so many people, and it's such an important thing, and I'm so glad that everybody is so incredibly supportive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Stevens, I have a contribution from you.
Yes, very briefly, following on from what's been said by many people here, just to echo how much support there is for this in the community. Cliffs End parish councillors invited a representative from Kent Wildlife Trust to talk to them last week, and they arranged a further meeting for later on this month, because they want to see this kind of initiatives go forward, see what they can do in the local community. So it is very widespread support for this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Right.
And then you've got Councillor Wing.
Councillor Wing, right. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is we talked about in our training about not having a them and us situation, and this is very much we need to be in this together situation. And already there's lots of things going off in the community that I've noticed. I attended a community meeting last night where they've requested that KCC stop using weed killer, and they've already rewilded a bit. So the enthusiasm is out there, and that's testament to having us three here. So I think, how do we engage that, and how do we actually enhance or capture that energy that's out in the community to do the simple things that make a massive difference?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wing. We have a contribution from the Vice Chair of Council, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, not many of you know that I actually chair planning at Birchington Parish Council, and last year when I took the position, we actually have got a tree... Sorry, I have to stand up. Okay, one of the things that I did with my committee, we actually have had a tree policy in place for just over a year, whereby if anybody takes a tree away, they have to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chairman. Not for the first time, I got a bit confused with Councillor Yates's motion, as I think he did. But I don't believe that it's actually been moved anywhere that we should refer this back to Council, refer this to Cabinet, to report back to Council the actions the Council will take to address the arrangements. And I'd like to suggest that it's added to your motion that we do just that, and that report comes back to the normal Council meeting in February next year. What I would like to say is that we as a group debated this at some length, and again, we're unanimous in support of this. You know, obviously over time we'll see what the art of the possible is, but you know, the will is there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Well, that's good. Councillor Yates, would you like to wind up, please?
Sure. There is just a quick question I've got for the monitoring office, because the council leader has suggested an amendment to the motion to add the report after 6 months. And I was wondering, is that possible? Because I heard otherwise that wasn't possible. So that's why I didn't amend it myself.
Councillor Yates, the monitoring officer, will give you some advice on that point.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, it gets automatically reported back to Cabinet, and I think you can take into account the fact the offer by the leader to report back to Council in due course. It's not necessary to amend the motion at that point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Yates, would you like... you finish your winding up? Or
Yes,
would you...
yes. So, first of all, thank you for all the contributions here tonight. I think it's been really positive. And thank you to the leader of the council for both meeting with Councillor Garner and myself to discuss this in a very open manner. Given the unseasonably hot weather here tonight, I would recommend we go to the vote, but I would ask that this is a recorded vote given the public passion on this issue.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Yates. We can move to the vote now. I find it very unlikely that anyone is going to vote against. Perhaps it could be just as easily done if we turn around and ask those in favour of the motion, please, by a show of hands. And that does look unanimous to me. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you very much to everybody in the public gallery who's shown support to the Chamber for this motion. I move on to agenda item 8B, motion on notice relation to the Council system of governance. I call upon the Reverend Stuart Piper.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly, I'm hopeful for the same level of support that we've just received. Chairman, just for clarification, this is a new council body. I'd just like to say that we are not Tory light as Thanet Independents. We are not even UKIP light, but we are quite happy to declare ourselves light green. The I have a motion, a straightforward motion here before Council, and it reads as follows, that Council members have a debate this evening to consider gathering information that may provide members, at a later date, the opportunity to examine the option of changing our system of governance from the current cabinet-led system to a committee-led system. There are many councils across the UK, including Maidstone Council and Canterbury City Council, who have successfully adopted the committee system. Could I just add to that, please, Chairman, that both those councils have experienced in the last 12 years or so both systems of governance, and both of them have returned to the committee structure. One doesn't wish to wish ill on this body, but we could be facing 4 years of a minority administration, which may last the 4 years, it may not, which might provide a level of uncertainty for the people of Thanet. I have a feeling, and I'm hoping members will agree, by having a brief debate this evening, that we want to avoid that at all costs. Usually, for a council to move to a committee system, they would appoint some kind of working group to go and gather all the information and come back and report back to members. It can often be a time-consuming as well as expensive effort. My proposal in brief would be that we have a briefing, a presentation to members, either perhaps from Maidstone Borough Council leader or from Canterbury City Council leader, who have the experience. They will bring us the information, and we follow that up with a briefing from our own officers to work out how such a thing might be contemplated. So this evening it's a simple request. Can we decide as a council that we would like to look at the possibility of moving to a committee system, but this evening we are not inviting a vote to move to the system. Can we look at it, gather information, so that perhaps later, if members feel it's appropriate to take a vote on that, we can do? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Piper. Is there a seconder for that motion? I have Councillor Roper. Thank you very much. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3.7, a member of the controlling political group is entitled to reply. I call upon in this instance Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. I see no reason why there shouldn't be a debate on this issue tonight, although I'm not sure if there's an appetite for one, considering the temperature and the climate emergency that we've just announced. Yeah, why not?
And I presume I can take that as a proposal.
Sorry, yes, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bayford? Can I have a proposal and a seconder for the debate to proceed tonight? Because I presume we are leading to that now. That's what we've said, yes. As only the Council can adopt this motion, it will fall if not debated. It therefore will proceed. Do members agree to debate this, or are we happy just for this to be taken forward? Both. I therefore believe we can take this forward. Councillor Everett, would you like to say something? I'd like to speak in the debate. You would? Would you like to start the debate then, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Thanet Independent Group for their motion, which addresses an issue which was contained in the Labour manifesto. And I think it's an idea which is especially relevant in the context of what has become a serially hung council. However, I would say that the motion as it stands leads nowhere, as it did not propose an outcome to the discussion, although Councillor Stuart Piper has, of course, elaborated on the motion in presenting it, but the motion itself would simply not result in anything. So I will be moving an amendment. This amendment calls on members on all sides to come together and consider what they want. It recognises that we do need officer advice and that there is a formal process which must be followed to try to change the Council's constitution. But it asks members to set a clearer direction first, not least because there are many variants of the committee system. What we would hope is that a majority of members can reach some kind of a consensus to inform the formal stage of the process, rather than simply throw the task to officers. The objective is to find a solution that works better for all groups on the council, not just for one of them. And I hope that it will be more or less in line with what Councillor Piper said, even if not specific in detail. So the amendment that I'm moving is, on the existing motion, we delete the wording from members in the first line to option of. So it now reads that Council calls upon the 4 political groups and the single non-aligned councillor to work together to identify preferred options, and then it reverts, for changing our system of governance from the current cabinet-led system to a committee-led system, and then submit those options to the Constitution Review Working Party for consideration. And it finishes, as does the original motion, there are many councils across the UK, including Maidstone Council and Canterbury City Council, who have successfully adopted the committee system. That, I think, will give us a basis for discussion tonight, and also to take the matter forward collectively. So I move that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Have you got that in writing that you can provide us with? Thank you very much. Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you very much. That's Councillor.
Excuse me. Would it be possible to amend the amendment?
Not yet. We have to debate the amendment to the motion first.
Right.
So, having had one speaker, can I have any more speakers on the amendment, please? Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, I'd just like to be absolutely clear what is being moved here. I mean, I hope you're not saying that this motion is committing this council to move from the current system, that we're committed to looking at options. Yeah, okay. And I'd be happy to go along with that. What I do think, though, is that the research that goes into this should be really far-reaching to make sure we really do get the best option. Because, although Councillor Piper's motion does say Maidstone Council and Canterbury City Council have successfully adopted the committee system, they may have successfully introduced the committee system, but if you talk to members of the council, they might not all agree that the operation of it has been successful. Also, in his opening address, Councillor Piper said that the committee system would take some of the uncertainty out of this council. I'm not sure it actually would, because you'd still have a hung council. What you'd have is a hung council passing stuff around the committee system. Now, those of us that have had experience of a committee system in the past will know that it can be an absolutely torturous process, and only that can be, I'm bound to say, something that members may deliberately be doing in order to thwart progress. And indeed, dare I say that back in the day, and I'm referring to the distant past now, I don't think it's been beyond the realms of possibility. There may be even officers use the committee system to move things around. So I think it really is important that whatever we do is really researched, and we do actually clearly identify what benefit will be derived from changing, because change for change's sake isn't, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm not just saying that because we happen to be in control of a minority council. I mean, I'm aware as anybody that, that could change at any time. But I do think that, it's a fundamental change. We've got to make sure we're doing it right, because if we change, it won't be that easy to change back again quickly if we got it wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Do we have any other speakers on the amendment to the motion? Councillor Constantine.
I did indicate fairly early on, actually, Chair. I'm quite in favour, actually, of a committee-style structure from what I know about a committee-style structure. I was struck this morning at Kent County Council by the debate that was taking place from the Kent Youth Council, who were giving a presentation today. And they said, and I'm paraphrasing, but they said that public confidence in politicians is at an all-time low, and I think that needs to be heeded. They also said there were 20,000 councillors dealing with 9 years of austerity when we have too much to do with too little to do it. So politics and the role of a councillor is in a very difficult place at the moment. And we know councillors are absolutely best placed to know what really needs to be done locally, working alongside our residents. So I would support this, a thorough look at a committee-style system, because I think it could introduce more openness and more transparency. For instance, we could co-opt people with relevant experience onto those committees, such as residents, tenants and other service users. I think that could be extremely helpful. We need to be I think we need to be more member-led, but also be seen to be more member-led. And this will allow us, I think, better to represent our residents. I think it will give us slightly more agency. So I think a committee-style system is possibly an imperative to opening up our local democracy and really letting people access what goes on in the chamber and influence it and see what the work we do.
Thank you, Councillor Constantine. Do we have any other speakers on the amendment? No.
Yes.
We do?
No,
No,
she wants to speak on the amendment, she says.
You'd like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Bailey, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I agree with what most people have said here, the original amendment and the amended amendment. The only thing I would add to, Councillor Everett's amendment is that you just did the binary choice between committee and cabinet, whereas there are other councils that have hybrid systems as well. So I would just add maybe that in to explore. I mean, I know we are just exploring at the moment. I mean, I think the public perception is that there is too much power in too few hands in a cabinet system. And every councillor here was elected to represent their people, their constituents. And I don't feel as if that is actually happening with this system. There may be, obviously it needs exploring. There may be flaws within the committee system as well, but we won't know until we explore them. So, I just think there's definite benefits in investigating every system. And if we do have someone come to speak from another council, I know Tunbridge Wells have got a good hybrid, or have got a hybrid system, so maybe we could have speakers from a variety of different systems, models. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Piper, would you like to sum up on the amendment? It's advice I've received from the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy with the amendment as presented by Councillor Everett and as discussed by members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Piper. Unless there's any more speakers, we can proceed to a vote. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. Have we got? And those against? So once again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. That motion will be carried forward.
No, sorry.
My apologies, I'm a bit new to this. We should now debate the motion as amended. Could I have a speaker who'd like to do such? Well, I've now had the advice to take it to the vote, but I think we've actually done that.
No, you haven't. Sorry.
Oh, we haven't?
No. Yeah. What you've done so far is you've amended the original proposal. That now becomes a substantive motion. What you haven't done is now agreed that substantive motion. If I can have a proposal and a seconder for that, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Piper and Councillor...
Roper.
Councillor... Roper?
Dennis.
Councillor Dennis.
No, I'm sorry.
I had my eye on Councillor Dennis. Now, can we have a vote in favour of the amended motion, please? The substantive motion.
Thank you.
And that looks unanimous again. And those against?
Thank you.
Abstentions.
I don't think I need abstentions in view of that. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for that and your patience. Councillor Piper, you have your hand in the air.
When I went to school, Chairman, the teacher always said, if you need to go to the toilet, put your hands up in the air. Chairman, I'm old. I need to go to the toilet from time to time, more frequently than others. May I please beg a 3-minute or a 5-minute pause in proceedings for a comfort break?
Councillor Piper, I've been reliably assured that you can just go if you like. Can I have your microphone off, though? We don't want to hear anything. Moving on to agenda item 9, we have councillors from right across Thanet to hear the leaders' report this evening. Are you in good form, Councillor Bayford?
I'm not, Chairman. I'd forgotten about us getting ready to go home, but not as much as everybody else will be, having to sit and listen to it, but there we are. Thank you, Chair. Our new automatic number plate recognition, ANPR, parking system is now live at Trinity Square car park in Margate, following a successful launch. This ticketless parking pilot allows people to pay for parking by cash or card at the end of their stay, so they only pay for the time they've used the car park. This is something we know is welcomed. Over the past few weeks, officers have spent time on site supporting car park users with the changes, particularly blue badge holders and residents using the medical centre. There are also signs letting people know there is a 10-minute waiting period that is free, and we will continue to monitor car park usage here and carry out a review to evaluate the impact and benefits this new kind of parking might bring to Thanet. Parking provision and its cost are perennial issues, and if successful, digital parking may provide some of the answers. Members will be aware that Cabinet is to consider a proposal to sell the freehold of the Dreamland site to the lessee and operator Sands Heritage Limited. It's only right that we look at the next steps needed in order to secure a successful long-term future for Dreamland and, at the same time, protect the Council from the risks and liabilities that are inherent with maintaining the status quo. It's fair to say that options for the site are considerably more limited under continued Council ownership and might mean that iconic parts of the site remain vacant and unused for many years to come. Clearly, we will need to ensure that conditions are attached to any sale to protect the listed heritage structures and to restrict the future use of the site to leisure. I would like to remind members that for this Council to CPO the site was a bold decision that has enabled the transition of Dreamland from being a sad, derelict, burnt-out wasteland to becoming the bustling visitor attraction it is today. Returning it to the private sector, who are committed to further investment in the site, is a logical next step. And I welcome the opportunity to review this in more detail at our Cabinet meeting in August. This month saw the introduction of finance surgeries. Members of the public have been invited into the Council offices to go through the Council's accounts for 2018-19. Each year, the Council opens up its books for inspection, but this time around, in a bid to be more accessible and transparent, the finance team has been holding sessions out of hours to give more people the chance to engage in this process. The feedback from those who have attended has been positive. Walking local people through the finer detail of our accounts has been a really valuable experience and demonstrates our commitment to increased transparency with our residents. I'm delighted that the successful bid of £497,000 for the funding from MHCLG will mean that a significant new resource can be provided in Ramsgate to help address the issue of rough sleepers. The new Somewhere Safe to Stay Rough Sleeping Centre will be a place where vulnerable people currently sleeping on the streets can access professional help and guidance, including immediate shelter and mental health support. The bid was coordinated by TDC in partnership with the charity Pathways to Independence and will make a real difference to supporting rough sleepers in our district. In June, A Better Cliftonville hosted a Dalby Square Day, which involved bird box painting, shrub planting, a litter pick and refreshments. And a new plaque to honour the Dalby Square Townscape Heritage Initiative was also unveiled. The THI initiative, funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the Council, is aimed at celebrating the rich and varied history of Dalby Square and its gardens, And the Dalby Square Day was also a chance to thank the many volunteers who have put in so much hard work supporting this scheme and promoting community involvement and pride in our area. The council is working with the Friends of Ellington Park on a project to regenerate the park, funded by a successful £1.8 million National Lottery Heritage Fund grant. This will see a new community cafe, toilets, a restored bandstand and landscape works in the park. In June, volunteers from the community and the council took part in a spring clear-out day, with 2 van loads of waste and recycling cleared, making way for a new digital archive hub. Over the next 2 years, the team behind the project will be calling out for historic material relating to the park and will create an online catalogue and website. Images from this archive will be used to create heritage and ecology trails around the park. We received a significant number of complaints and media attention regarding the hedge maintenance work carried out at the Winter Gardens on the 4th of June. Although Kent Police have confirmed that they found no evidence of any disturbance or damage to nesting birds and therefore concluded that no offences have been committed under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, we are keen to improve the processes followed in relation to this work in the future, and we're currently considering the following actions. I do apologise because this is a bit of repetition of what Councillor Ashby said earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. Although it's not a statutory requirement, we're recruiting an arboricultural officer as soon as possible. Ecological risk assessments are to be carried out for a variety of parks and open spaces works, which will include the use of new technology. We have purchased, as a trial at this stage, a thermal imaging wildlife camera, and this will be used alongside traditional methods of ecological monitoring as part of the prescribed process before works are carried out. Check sheets will be included as part of the ecological risk assessment to ensure compliance is documented. Recommendations are being sought on this from the RSPB, Wildlife Trust and other local authorities, which will help us shape this. New parks and open spaces service standards will be drafted, approved and published on the Council's website so the public know exactly what to expect from us. A review of our arrangements with contractors, including exploring a new permit to work process for any contractors carrying out work on our behalf. The opening of the Turner Prize 2019 exhibition is now just 3 months away, and we're pleased to be working in partnership with the gallery and other local partners as preparations begin to ramp up. The news that actor Russell Tovey will curate Margate Now, an arts festival which will run alongside the first 2 weeks of the exhibition, has generated even more public interest in what is shaping up to be a really exciting programme. Between September and December, we expect to welcome over 250,000 extra visitors to Thanet, which will be a most welcome boost to our tourism economy. Thanet has increased its number of award-winning beaches by 40%, going from 10 in 2018 to 14 in 2019. This means that 14 of Thanet's beaches have been named amongst the country's very best, and it means there are blue flag beach along every 2.7 miles of our coastline. All of our blue flag beaches were also successful in their bid for a Seaside Award, and as a result, Thanet now has 21 beach awards, more than any other district council in the country. We're immensely proud to have achieved so many prestigious awards for our beaches. This is recognition of all the hard work put in by our officers, various agencies, voluntary groups and local people to protect our beaches and ensure they remain world class. The high standard of our beaches is obviously a major factor in attracting record numbers of visitors, which put tremendous pressure on our cleansing teams trying to cope with the vast amounts of litter generated. We will continue in our efforts to educate the public to dispose of their rubbish responsibly, or, better still, take it home with them. Now, I apologise to leaders that in my report I did include a section on East Kent housing, but it's virtually the same as the bit I read out in my earlier question. I think you can do without that, but if you want to ask questions or make comments on it, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. I call upon Councillor Everett, should he wish to make any comment or ask any questions.
I think I can find something to say, Chair. I'd like to thank the Leader for the advance copy of his report, slightly inaccurate as it was, as he says, but for reasons which are understandable. And I'd like to welcome the positive developments described for the district, including the additional blue flags for our beaches and the work being done in Ellington Park, which I think is a really good example of local community engagement. It's right, of course, that the Leader should focus on good news, but I believe that we also have to confront difficult truths. And I have to say that what I've heard this evening about East Kent Housing doesn't really do that. The situation with gas safety certificates is concerning because it puts our tenants at risk. It is important of itself, but it is also a symptom of a more fundamental problem, which I suggest is the gross failure of governance and management within East Kent Housing. EKH was set up under the current leader in 2011. It was, according to a newspaper report at the time, the 71st arm's-length management organisation set up in Britain to manage local authority housing. It was, however, the first to do so on the basis of sharing responsibility for more than one local authority area. It was also unusual in that its principal raison d'etre was to cut costs, initially by sharing management. The Labour group at the time, as Councillor Bayford may remember, opposed the move. A significant factor in that were concerns about governance, and that nobody in this authority could be held accountable if things went wrong. This council is responsible in law for EKH's health and safety failures, but which cabinet member or senior officer is willing to put their hand up and say that they personally let the council's tenants down over gas safety? Council housing affects a minority of residents, but to those who are our tenants, it's probably the most important relationship that they have with this council, and they include some of our most vulnerable residents. The risk of the ALMO structure is that it pushes their housing concerns to the periphery of members' attention, especially if they don't have a significant number of council homes in their wards and so receive little or no casework related to EKH. Nevertheless, the structure has had 8 years to prove its worth. If we turn to Mr Willis's formal report to Cabinet on the gas certificate debacle, we learn that the East Kent Audit Partnership was consequently asked to look at electrical certification, lifts, fire safety and Legionella safety, and that initially findings are revealing that there are failings in these areas too. We're also told that there have been concerns about performance aspects of EKH asset management since the ALMO was established, and in particular concerns about procurement and contract management, predominantly in connection with failures to follow proper procurement processes, and that a number of contracts have been poorly managed. Our officers were initially misled by EKH about the number of gas safety certificates outstanding. EKH failed to supply a health and safety report due at the end of April, citing issues with bank holidays, which were obviously unexpected, or to meet a second promised deadline to do so in May. And there is a continuing dispute with the former contractor P&R about overpayments which run to almost £1 million across the 4 councils. By any measure, the EKH mission statement, trusted by our residents, the councils and our staff to deliver a great and reliable service, rings rather hollow. Meanwhile, what was TDC doing? We can see that an improvement plan was put in place by the 4 councils earlier this year. But what was TDC's contribution to governance and how we got to this point? I would urge all members to visit the East Kent Housing website, which purports to disclose the organisation's decision-making processes. The last meeting of its board for which there is any information provided was on July the 16th, 2018. Councillor Game attended as a new board member representing TDC. Further board meetings were scheduled for September the 24th and December the 10th. But if they did take place, and I'm told that they did, you would struggle to learn about them from the EKH website. As for the Thanet Area Board, appointments to which are on our own agenda tonight, this council never put forward anyone at all in 2018. And as far as you can tell from the EKH website, it never met either. Similarly, there are no quarterly performance statistics online for later than December 2018. There are no decisions made listed, and there is no forward plan provided. So perhaps the EKH website is just another example of a failing of the organisation. But either way, its governance and structure appears to be no more than a Potemkin village, concealing the fact that elected members from the 4 authorities have not actually been scrutinising its senior management at all. And certainly if they had been, they don't seem to have done a very good job. I don't want to leave the impression there's nobody in EKH working hard for residents, or that I think our senior officers haven't put time and effort into trying to remedy the organisation's failures. Cabinet will consider the future of EKH at its meeting on July the 25th. Due process notwithstanding, I hope the Leader will confirm that as far as Thanet is concerned, it doesn't have one.
Thank you very much for that. Your fervour is noted, Councillor Everett. It should be mentioned, however, there have fortunately not been any unfortunate incidents. Councillor Bayford, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, Councillor Everett's right. This was set up in 2011. Very shortly before I ceased to be leader in 2011, and it's probably worth pointing out that the governance of EKH really, as far as this council is concerned, sat with his party and UKIP. Was it UKIP? Yeah, it was UKIP, yeah. For 7 of the intervening years. You know, I think that this evening I've been totally open about the shortcomings of EKH. We recognise that something has to be done about it. I think it's right and proper that in the short term EKH are supported to actually bring the situations as far as regulation is back to normality. And as you've already alluded to, there's paperwork coming to Cabinet on the 25th, I think, where there are some options in there for the future of EKH. And I'm sure you'll have something to say on that night, as indeed will I. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bayford. I call upon Councillor Reverend Stuart Piper to comment or ask questions. I can assure you didn't miss too much, Councillor Piper.
He saved the best bit, Chairman, about the blue flag beaches for after I'd come back. I noticed he put it at the end. I think it is right. Thank you, Leader, for the report. We had it in plenty of time to have a look at it. There's lots of good things in here. For me, one thing stands out above the others. I'm not saying it's any more important, but for me it stood out, and that is the evidence that the Council is listening, has listened, and is now communicating with members of the public as well as members of this chamber much better, I genuinely believe, than my first 4 years here showed me, where really we didn't seem to be doing it. We are communicating, we're telling people what we're doing, we're not hiding the failures. It's quite clear here. East Kent Housing have had major difficulties. Personally, I'm very pleased with the response that we've had in the Monitoring Officer's report already. Shows it's being taken very seriously. And please permit me just to say, 3 years ago when a councillor first brought this kind of thing to the attention of this council, the response was very, very different. This is very encouraging, and I thank the Council for it, and thank you for your report.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Piper. That's a very positive and contribution look at our Council as well. Councillor Bayford, do you have anything to add at all? Thank you very much. Councillor Roper, would you like to ask any comment, make any questions, ask any?
Yes, I will be very brief because I think we all want to go home fairly soon. First of all, I'd like to echo Councillor Piper's comments in that I welcome the report. There's lots of lovely, positive things in here, and it does show that at last the public are being listened to and being consulted with, and long may that continue. That's been shown particularly with the Hedges fiasco, should we call it that. But the only one main comment that I would like to add is that please, can we do something about the toilets? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roper. Councillor Bayford, nothing to add on. Could you switch your microphone off, Councillor Roper? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, we have a report of the chairman, from the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny panel. Are you still in good form, Councillor Campbell?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the committee had met. We've had our first meeting of the committee where we determined the work programme for the next few months. This is contained in the written agenda and I won't repeat it. It's there for everyone to read. We also decided to start a scrutiny review working group to scrutinise the traveller situation in the district. It's been mentioned earlier on and was subject to a particular question from Councillor Taylor. There is a meeting in a couple of weeks' time. If you contact Democratic Services, you wish to contribute to that, I'm sure you'll be most welcome. Basically, I would just like to welcome the new Vice Chair, whomever that may be, in the next agenda item, and thank the thank Charles Hungry for his support and assistance in the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you. Questions are welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Campbell. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Campbell from the Chamber? I don't think there are. Councillor Campbell, thank you very much indeed. The next agenda item is actually not about the Vice Chairman of Scrutiny. It's agenda item 11, representation on outside bodies. Will councillors please refer to the notes on their chairs? I call upon the leader.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would like to move the two lists, one that appears in the agenda and one that appears on the members' notes. So the first one is for executive appointments. Now, that I'm just proposing that we keep the bodies there, but no proposals for membership will be made tonight. That will happen at Cabinet meeting at a later date. As far as the representation, the non-executive ones, you'll see on your list those organisations where we have volunteers to sit on those bodies, and I would propose that those appointments are agreed by Council tonight, and that the remaining bodies that currently don't have any representation, that I invite members to contact Democratic Services if they would like to volunteer. I understand that not everybody understood that they could put their names forward, so if you're interested in any of those bodies, please would you put your names forward. As an aside, Chair, if I may, I'm also asking that Democratic Services actually contact the organisations that we've got on these lists to find out whether in fact they still do want representation from this council, because it has to be said that councillors are busy, they haven't always got time to go on these other bodies, but I do understand that there may be some organisations that have as part of their constitution the need to have a member from this council, and we should be aware of that. So moved, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. I'm looking for a seconder, but Councillor Everett, you've indicated that you're...
I want to move a slight amendment to add Councillor Pauline Farrance as the Council's representative of the Powell Cotton Museum and Quex House.
I think we can include that. Can I take that forward then to approval by members? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, changes to committees, panels and boards. Nomination of members to serve on committees. Group leaders may wish to take this opportunity to advise of changes to their nominations to committees, panels and boards for the remainder of 2019-2020. Councillor Bayford, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
I do, Chairman. I would like to propose the removal of you from overview and scrutiny, as well as the Vice Chairman. Your services are no longer required. And I'd like to nominate that you be replaced by Councillors Parsons and Coleman-Cook.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. I'm really quite put out by that, but notwithstanding, I'm sure that can be taken forward. Councillor Everett, have you got any amendments at all?
I do, Chair. We would like to add to our list of substitutes for the Planning Committee Councillor Liz Green, Councillor Pat Moore and Councillor Alan Curry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Everett. Councillor Stuart Piper, do you have any amendments?
No changes, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roper, do you have any changes?
No changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the election of the Vice Chairman to the Overview and Scrutiny panel. Is there a nomination, please? Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Parsons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Is there another nomination? Seconding that, Councillor Campbell. Thank you very much indeed. That clearly meets with approval from the Chairman. Are there any other nominations? I think we can safely take that as carried. Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations, Councillor Parsons. Agenda item 13. Agenda item 13, changes to the Constitution, the Senior Officer Employment Rules. I call upon the Monitoring Officer to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware that this report and the recommendations therein have been the subject of discussion at the Constitution Review Working Party, which then recommend them on to the Standards Committee. They're then further considered by the Standards Committee and are now recommended to the Council by that body. However, a particular issue has arisen in the last 24 hours, a detailed legal matter concerning that report, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to try and explain that detailed legal matter at this venue. I don't think it's the right environment for that to happen. Therefore, what I'm proposing is that I withdraw this report and I resubmit it to the Constitution Review Working Party for further detailed consideration.
Thank you very much. Are we happy to take that forward, councillors? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 14, the pay policy statement. I call again on the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the pay policy statement is merely a statement, a list of policies and processes we have in relation to pay, in relation to relationships between highest paid and lowest paid. You're not being asked to approve the core documents in this. You merely asked to approve the policy statement as a reflection of your existing core policies. The main changes from last year about issues about changing and some of the Deputy Chief Officers' names changed. There's a change in some minor typographical errors, and also I think there's a reference to the new consultation on the potential pay limit on £95,000 for severance payments. So I propose it to Council for adoption.
Thank you very much. As Chairman, I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chairman please second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Do members agree? Thank you. Agenda item 15, members' allowances, the report back from the ECJRP committee. Members are asked to note the report. Are we happy to do so, members? I'm sure we are. That concludes the business for this meeting of the Council. I would like to say thank you very much to everyone here for bearing with me. This was my first meeting. I did my best. I hope to do better in the future. Thank you very much indeed.